Joe Bannister, you've done just so much great work. Where's the best place for folks to check out the work and material that you've put out and done?
Well, a lot of it's just, I just kind of go out and speak when I'm invited. So there's a lot of videos out on YouTube, et cetera. But freedomabovefortune.com has always been my website. There's a mailing list that people can join there. If they are concerned about lists, go get a throwdown address on Yahoo and join the list. But, I do send out alerts and updates as to what's going on, at least from my neck of the woods. And so freedomabovefortune.com, along the left-hand side, there's all kinds of good information there. I'm planning on releasing some videos about protecting your rights and the IRS and their bag of dirty tricks, what kind of dirty tricks they pull out to people.
Hey, when you beat them, when they arrested you or indicted you for telling people about the fraud, and it went to trial, can you just briefly recap what happened there and then what they did when you beat them?
They started investigating me. I resigned in '99. They started investigating me criminally in 2001. November of 2004, I was indicted and arrested by agents I used to work with. 2-hour car ride up to Sacramento to the U.S. Marshals lockup.
Did they put you in handcuffs?
They cuffed me. They cuffed me in the front and gave me some water. They were real kind to me.
What did they say? Hey, Joe, we're here to arrest you. You've been talking. You're not allowed to do that in America.
Yeah, well, they came into my house with guns drawn, and my attitude, which is so funny when they put my name in these reports and things. I kind of thought of it like a training exercise. I laughed because when I was at the IRS, Alex, as I say, I was at least a Second Amendment supporter. I was aware of that. And so I had bumper stickers in my cubicle that said, fear the government that fears your guns, and the experts agree gun control works, with the pictures of Stalin and Mao. And so whenever we'd have training exercises, they'd make me the tax protester. And I would get hit with the soap pellets. So when they came to arrest me, I really just kind of pictured myself in another training exercise. Showed my hands. I knew the drill because I'd trained it many times, and off I went. But the prosecutor tried to keep me in jail, saying that I was a flight risk, and the judge looked at him like he was a nut because there was no evidence that I was. So the judge released me, and I had about 7 months to prepare for my trial, which was in June of 2005. I was charged with conspiring to defraud the United States of America and for preparing 3 false amended tax returns. They didn't address my personal situation whatsoever. They were trying to join me to a client and claim that our efforts to get a refund from the IRS was a conspiracy and involved false tax returns. Now, the thing is that the IRS lays out what it claims is the correct way to do things with them, and that is to pay the tax first and sue for a refund. Well, we went chapter and verse in exactly what they lay out to sue for a refund, and that's what myself and my client were prosecuted for, to conspire against the United States for following the IRS's rule book and seeking a refund. And the jury, they're in Sacramento, California, I learned talking to them after I was acquitted, they were just astounded that this case was even brought against me because all of the evidence kept showing what a good guy I was. I mean, what a good CPA I was. I was going to bat for my client. Everything that I submitted was right out of their own manuals, right out of the regulations, right out of the statutes. And they said, well, Joe, why did they bring up so much evidence that made you look so good? I said, well, most of their evidence, their documentary evidence, came from me because they issued me a grand jury subpoena, and a CPA does not have Fifth Amendment protection in their work papers. So I had to give them these stacks of work papers from my efforts, and that's what they used in the trial. They also used a 2-hour video, which is probably on the Internet, where I spoke to the employees of my client's business. And I just went through a 2-hour litany of the reason that I left the IRS and what I learned. And the government used that tape in the trial and I guess because they were so devoid of anything, any evidence, they were trying to convince the jury that this video showed me in the act. And the jury wanted to see the video a second time during deliberations because they could see that I was sincere. I was looking at actual documents. I mean, there was just no BS about my presentation.
Well, for those that don't know, they've written the income tax code, and correct me if I'm wrong, but interviewing you and other experts, where the big banks and offshore corporations get out of paying it. So there's loopholes in there for them. It's all paid into the IRS to go on interest to the debt of the private bankers. We didn't have it until 1913. It was only about 1% until the 50s. We built this country without it. Now it's the parasite dragging us down. As the public begins to learn about this, what are they going to do? But sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is the parasite. I mean, interestingly, there's a website called hearliberty.com, like HEAR, and there's a T. Coleman Andrews interview that U.S. News and World Report did in 1956. And Mr. Andrews was a former IRS commissioner, and you should read how he lambasted the very agency that he was commissioner of and the income tax. At least back in the 50s, there were still people that were in government that recognized communism when they saw it. So, yeah, it's like the chameleon keeps changing its spots, or changing its colors, but it can't change them fast enough. The American people are catching on. Well,
look at what government's doing now. It's openly being run by private banks who are literally stolen $12.8 trillion. Just the number is almost the GDP, 13 trillion is the GDP. And they're saying, Obama says, I'm cutting government in half. Bush tripled it. He's going to more than double it in 1 year. Just the level of lying. I mean, folks would think that I couldn't be amazed anymore by the lying. I am really getting speechless, Joe Bannister, because it's so ridiculous how corrupt they are. But then if you study, I guess, criminology like you've done, and I've done it as a layman, when criminals and psychos don't get caught and get away with it, don't they always just get wilder and wilder?
That's exactly right. And I think, the American people, we all collectively, I mean, you and I and many people, all your production team, we're working our butts off as much as we can. And when our eyes were opened, we get to work. But other people's eyes are opened and they go back to their easy chair. And it's a group effort. People who are just sitting around doing nothing, you got to do something. And my recommendation, as always, first is prayer. I believe that collectively we've offended God greatly, and we need to get back to where we're not doing that. But also watch out for discouragement. When you feel like the discouragement coming on, that's the evil forces trying to disarm you. And everybody's going to feel that discouragement, but, reject it.
I agree.
Move forward.
I agree. Go ahead.
And as I say, I do listen to your show pretty frequently, and you mentioned Hogan's Heroes, and I talk to people about Hogan's Heroes because look at it this way. You had these prisoners of war. The Germans thought that they were these compliant slaves who were immobilized, correct? Mm-hmm. And then what would happen at night? They'd go out into the German countryside and wreak havoc to the Nazi war effort. There's Americans out there that they may be stuck in a job where they can't, take on the IRS, they can't do any of this stuff, but every person can find something that they can do to join this effort to wreak havoc to these tyrants. And I'm convinced everyone can play a role. But stealth is the key. I mean, people like you and me, stealth isn't an option, but there's plenty of people that can use stealth. Don't wear your support for Ron Paul on your sleeve or your bumper sticker like Ann Coulter does. Just, do the job that needs to get done and do it in stealth.
Speak of the devil, that's another example of wannabe co-opting. Suddenly, she's all for Ron Paul, so's Glenn Beck. That shows that we are becoming the majority. They can see our growth curve. We're a huge minority now, but they understand it's just going to keep growing and growing. we are going to be the majority. We're almost there because everything we talked about is coming true. What do you think the average police officer, I mean, I've talked to a lot of them, I know what their view is, but I mean, your take on talking to them, or your average federal person, they tell them for decades there's no new world order. And it doesn't exist and it's not happening. And then suddenly, they come right out on the news and say there is a world government, but it's going to save you from the economic downturn. I've been told that that's really what's waking government people up, is, wait a minute, you said none of this existed, and now you're telling me it's good.